I think the new era will be involving James Bond trying to find a house that's affordable. I mean,
What? He's going to be the housing market. That's the villain.
exactly.
We're going to get
Inflation.
M. Bison from the Chun-Li movie, who's a housing development. Yes, crossover, bitches. James Bond and the search of who James Bond will be. This is talking about the direction they want James Bond and 007 to go. And it's actually saying that they want to get a James Bond that is willing to commit for at least a decade. Now, that sounds kind of crazy, but if you look at it, with the exception of, what's his name? Not tomorrow.
Yeah, you're talking about George
Timothy
Lazenby.
Dalton. With the exception of Timothy Dalton,
yeah.
most of the Bonds have committed for about a decade. I mean,
Yeah.
Daniel Craig started in what, 2004?
Five or six, somewhere around there.
And now it's 2022 or 1 or whatever is when his last movie came out. So yeah, they're committed for that long. I know he didn't want to be, but yeah, they're saying they want somebody to be committed for a year. Of course, Idris Elba will not be that person. They say that the movie is going to be a couple of years off, and when we cast Bond, it's a 10 to 12 year commitment. So we're probably thinking, do I really want that thing? Not everybody wants to do that. It was hard enough getting Daniel Craig to do it. And he was in his early 30s at the time. Now, they haven't said like what age person they're looking for or anything. They have said, though, before they do that, they want to figure out who the villain is going to be, who James Bond is going to be fighting. Now, I've seen all the James Bond movies, but I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, off the top of my head, I'm as versed. I couldn't sit there and come up with a bunch of, I mean, I know Goldfinger, I know Blofeld. Yeah, that's off the top of my head, except for the newer ones. His iconic villains, I'm not as familiar with them. You got, like, you know, Jaws, and they're like side villains, though.
Yeah.
They said, when we get to the point like we are now, we have to think about the trajectory of the Bond films and the storylines and where we want to take them. So that's really the main focus at the beginning. Once we have a sense of where we want to go, then we'll start thinking about casting. So, and they also said we always sit down with our writers and start by thinking about what is the world afraid of. We start by thinking about who is the Bond villain. And when they say villain, I think that they do mean specifically who that villain will be name-wise, but they're also talking about what is the thing that we're scared of. And they elaborated on that here. We try to focus on that as a sort of uber story. And then we want to also look at Bond's emotional life and what he'll be facing personally that he hasn't had to deal with before. So he has two big issues in the films. One is the geopolitical and one is the other. Oh, and the other is the personal note. Such as like when Casino Royale came out, terrorism with 9/11 and everything was a big deal. So they had Lashif, who was a terrorist, or he worked for terrorists or something like that. And then with the newest one, it was, you know, pandemic and stuff like that, and diseases, and this guy was dealing with diseases, etc., etc. I guess the questions here is, do you think, Nick, and I don't know how versed you are with James Bond or 007 and the lore and the villains they have, is there a villain you think that would fit well with this new era? Of course, having to be updated. And also, what direction do you think the overarching, like, what will be the thing? Will it be terrorism? Will it be, you know, what do you have any ideas of what you think the thing could be, the theme, rather, moving forward with this new James Bond era?
I think the new era will be involving James Bond trying to find a house that's affordable. I mean,
what?
he's gonna fight apartment companies or housing companies.
He's gonna be the housing market. That's the villain.
Exactly.
We're gonna get
Inflation.
M. Bison from the Chun-Li movie, who's a housing development. Yes, crossover, bitches.
He's gonna be dealing with how much it costs for him to go to the grocery store. Inflation.
Inflation
I
is
don't
the
know.
villain.
I mean, if you think about it, yes, these villains have been specific to like the time and era, but you know, you could put Lashif into a new era Bond today, or you could put Dr. No into a new era Bond. Just don't put whatever Rami Malek and Christoph Waltz were doing in those two movies. Please don't do that. Please just leave them alone and die and forever. I mean, honestly, if they will. It's just they have to adapt to them. They could use any characters. They bring back Jaws for all I care. I mean, you know, it's not really a specific character because these characters can be adapted and upgraded, and you know, I mean, I don't know. They're not gonna have like Goldfinger stealing gold out of Fort Knox because that seems kind of dated. But you know, look what they did with like Die Hard. You know, Die Hard 1 was them trying to steal gold. Die Hard 4 was about them trying to burn down the internet with a fire sale. You know, it's just like, I'm sure they can figure out a way to, even if it's new characters or something like that. There's not really a character that, you know, they couldn't update at some point.
I think they should do none of that shit. not from what you're saying.
Have Bond fight himself, Nega Bond.
Oh God, double impact. No, I think. Now hear me out. Craziness, I know. Do something fucking new. You know? Stop looking back. You did something great back then. Look at the Daniel Craig era. Let's look at those real quick. What are the most popular Daniel Craig Bond movies? The ones that most people say are the best ones. You got Casino Royale, Skyfall. Yeah, that's it. You got those two. The other three.
I know you like No Time to Die as well.
The which one?
No Time to Die. Didn't you like that one?
That's the second one, right?
No, that's the last one.
Oh, No Time to Die. I thought it was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I did not like the way they ended it, but that's just, I think that's a very divisive ending. But I thought it was fine. It was the better of those other three. I would say it's the third best in what we've got. I loved Casino Royale. I loved Skyfall. And the other ones are all kind of like, Spectre was the worst.
I don't know. Quantum of Solace is pretty bad. Spectre is just too long and boring. Yeah, Spectre's just very boring.
Like, yeah, well, that's the thing about Spectre was just so damn boring. The Spectre and Quantum of Solace are kind of like this. And then, you know, No Time to Die is kind of just like, hey, I'm in that same group as you two, but I'm at least better. So I'm better than you. I'm not boring, but nothing really great. My point is this. The two movies, and I guess Quantum of Solace too, so that may debunk my theory, but those two movies that are thought the most highly of, they deal with new things. They are not linked or bringing back something old from the old movies, besides, you know, some member berries. But I mean, they're not bringing back old villains. They're not bringing back all that stuff. They're dealing with Casino Royale had Lashif. It was like a new deal. It was all new James Bond. And then Skyfall, new villain, whole new thing, exploring some of his background and stuff like that. Now, they eventually later on retconned some of that and made it linked to it, like with Spectre. But the ones that try to link it to the older movie or the older movies or older villains or something, Spectre, No Time to Die even to a degree, because it was still centered around Spectre and the Spectre organization. Those are the ones nobody likes, because those movies, those villains had their time. Do something new. Create your new Blofeld, your new Goldfinger, your new Spectre. Create the new ones. Just move forward and do something fresh.
That's kind of what Austin Powers was making fun of. It was making fun of the fact that, like, it's the same tropes over and over and over. Like, I think the only thing that worked with No Time to Die is the fact that he wasn't betting 6,000 women and all the gadgets. So, like, that's the only thing I liked about, you know, outside of like Spectre, who brought back some of these gadgets. It was like a more toned down James Bond that felt more realistic. You know, I don't need fucking Pierce Brosnan James Bond or Roger Moore James Bond or, you know, to an extent Sean Connery's James Bond. I need something that feels fresh and new and just doesn't feel like going to the well, because when you go to the well and you just create, you know, the same character over and over, it becomes stale. I mean, I think one of the best Bond movies was the George Lazenby movie, because it tried something different and it felt different. And yes,
or if you're going to do that, if you're gonna try and lean into one of those, go full Roger Moore. I mean, if you're gonna do it, go full camp and just like have a full. If you're gonna do that, do that. Or go the more realistic route, which is kind of what they did with Daniel Craig's Bond. I think is they were kind of taking it back there. I don't mind that. I like that aesthetic. I'm cool with that. But just do something new. Be your own movie. Stop looking back. Look forward. Say, what can we do that in 30 years they're trying to replicate? They're wanting. Let's do something so great. Because I don't think filmmakers do this a lot nowadays, especially with franchises. They don't look forward and say, I want to make something right now that in 30 years people are going to want to remake. They're going to want to come up and say, we need to take from that movie because it was so great. No, they're too busy saying, what worked 30, 40 years ago? Let's take that and incorporate it here because people will like it. No, make something that people like on their own, something new and fresh. That's what people talk about. I mean, you could have member berries come back and people might talk about that, but the things that really blow people away are the all new things, the things that are new and fresh, and people are like, holy shit, that was awesome. Casino Royale. Yeah, I mean, that's based on a book, but you know what I mean.
I mean, like I said, make him a pet detective. Do something new.
That would be very new, but no, that's overall. I know that doesn't really answer the question as to who's going to be what and all this and what the villain. I mean, I think as far as like the villain, I don't want them to dive too deep into current, and James Bond has always been a thing of its time, but they've balanced it out really well of being very dealing with the times but being timeless at the same time. I mean, some of them have been a bit more, you know, ingrained in the time that they're made than others, but they've always done a pretty good job of not 100% replicating what's going on right now, being a message movie, but dealing with things that are going on in people's heads right now, fears that we have as a whole and whatnot. I'm okay. I'm okay with them doing that, whatever they pick to do. But
yeah,
just don't make it just that. That's more like usually the background. Don't make it the foreground, and just make something new. I know that doesn't really answer the question, but that's where I'm at. I mean,
yeah. I honestly, I'm not one of those people that is like a creative. Like I wouldn't even know where to start with James Bond, but I know from a fan point, you know, you've been a James Bond fan way longer than I have. I didn't really start being a James Bond fan until I think the GoldenEye video game. So in that era, when that kind of, you know, Pierce Brosnan stuff. So
not a good movie, by the way, in my opinion. But great.
I think GoldenEye works on the level just because of Sean Bean. I think it's fine. Yeah. I think it's very dated, but it works because Sean Bean's such a good villain in that movie. So, and
he dies in the end.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Tomorrow Never Dies is Tomorrow Never Dies is Pierce Brosnan's best movie, I think.
Tomorrow Never Dies is the one with Halle Berry, right? And Christmas Jones.
No, that's the one with Terry Garr, and it's the one with the newspaper magnate, and it had Sheryl Crow did the song.
I thought that was the one with Denise Richards.
Never dies. No, that's World Is Not Enough.
Yeah, that's The World Is Not Enough. You know what? I'm that weird person. Everybody hates that movie. It's ridiculous.
The only thing good about it is fucking Robert Carlyle and maybe Sophia, whatever her name is.
It's so stupid, and just it leans into that old James Bond, like the corny, campy James Bond, that I was able to like it. I don't think it shouldn't have come out when it did. That's not the vibe people are going for. But
yeah.
Either way, what do you guys think in the comments below? Where should James Bond go from here? He's at a new. They're ready to renew James Bond. Are they going to go should they go the role or the way of like gritty Daniel Craig-esque James Bond, or should they go back to like more campy James Bond, or do something all new? As far as the villain, who should it be? Get a little bit old, or all new, or what? Let us know in the comments below what you guys think.